some solution. And okay, so we had some of you did it on React and some did on Vue. I'll try to do a very like simple version of both, because if I have to do both, then I cannot like get much into detail. For example, I will not do any CSS, because also the milestone did not ask for any CSS. It was most check functionality and React or Vue, how to structure things. So I'll try to do a simple version, and even a very, very simple one with no components, although I did like that most of you try to use components and do some separation, and so try to also practice this sending of props to components or events upwards. But we could do the same thing. It's very simple. So we could do it with just the app.js, no components and other files. So I'll try to do this version with no components for now. Let me share here. Okay, so this is what you had as a starting code, the ones that you did it with React. Just names 3 to-do list. This is what this returns, and we open it. This is what we see. So this to-do list, let me just put this next to here. And let me check also the README. No, not this README, the assessment README. So I'll find it. Just 1 second. I have too many things open. Okay, here I have it. Okay. So I will this here. This was basically what the things that we had to do. So first, a list of items. 3 items should be pre-filled, and we wanted to show this list of items. Okay. Okay, Luis, no worries. So we had to create these the 3 buttons. These 3 items were the basic ones, and then there was also a bonus one. So list of items, at least 3 items should be pre-filled, a form to add new items. So whenever you click the button add or just hit enter, the new item should be added to the list, and a way to cross out items from the list when it is clicked. So this, we could do it just by clicking on the item and do some strike through or changing color or whatever. In fact, in this place here, we do not actually ask to delete the item, so totally remove it. You could also do it like this if you like, but it was mostly to show that the item is like done. So mostly some styling for strike through or change color to gray or something that it shows us done. And then the bonus part was to try to make the list items to always be sorted alphabetically. Okay, so the first thing, the list of items. Let me just put this again like this. So we need to have somewhere to store our items, a list of items. And for storing our items, we will use some state variable. And for this, first of all, we need to import state from React. And then at the beginning of my function, I create this state variable. Let me say it, say list, set list. This will be my whole array. Use state, and this will be an array. I can initiate it to an empty array. I could in here pre-fill it with 3 items directly in here. So I could have my item 1 with some ID, and some text of one of the 2 items, like go to the supermarket. So I'm going to put some spaces. And another one. From school. Netflix or something. So one way to pre-fill this would be directly in here, create some items, or I could have the items created in some array, like default items array, and have here this same array. I could have it up here to some default items tray, and then I could initiate it to these default items. So simply pass default items in here. Any of the 2 will do. Or if you wanted to be a bit more sophisticated, you could also use the use effect that we have seen that it's a good way, a good common practice of using this for loading data, so that it loads at the beginning and only once, and not reload every time that the component reloads. But this was not really necessary. So any of the 2 ways, and we have our list with these 3 items to start. So we want to show this list. So I'm going to go down here to my template part, and for showing the list in React, we are using map. So we should take our list. This is the variable that holds the array of all the items. And so list.map. And for each item of my array, I would create a list item. So let me put some parentheses and here just show the item text. And since I have list item, I need to enclose this in one of in an UL element. So I'm going to enclose all this part to a UL element. And like this, I see directly my list appearing with the 3 items. If I check my console, which I should be checking most of the times, I get this warning that I did not use the key. So each list item should have a unique key prop. So remember that every time I create a list with a map, I need to also add the key. And the way to add the key here, since I have an ID, I could use this same ID as a key. If I didn't have an ID, I could use the index or something else. But so let me see what error do I get. No, okay. So I think this first part, all of you did it, and it was the simple one. Just load some items and show them with a list. Then the next one was to create a form so that we can add new items to this list. So I'm going to go up there here and just add a form and an input element of type text, so that I can, okay, it's because it's not closed. So that I can load something, and let me just add also a button. And I have it showing here. Right now, this input is not connected with any variable. I will need to connect it with another variable, which will be holding the new item. So this is my list of all items, but I also need a variable to hold every time the new item that will be then added to the list. So I will create another state variable. That I'm going to initiate to an empty object. It will have the same format because I want to create things that I will be added in this same list. So it will have this same format, and I can also initiate it with an ID 0 and a text like an empty string just to initialize it to something. And then this input element that I created, I need to connect it with this new item here. This, okay. So to connect it, I set the value to be equal to new item dot text, because actually what I will be connecting is this part, the text, the ID I will generate in some other way. And so in React, I need to do both things. In Vue, we have the V model that does this automatically, but in React, we need to do both things, have the value to connect to where we want to store what the inputs will be, and also have an onChange function that will be setting this to, so that we'll be updating this state variable. And so I will call this handle change, and I need to create this function to handle the change, to get the value and update this object. So my handle change will be taking the event as an input automatically. And then every time I need to update this item, for updating an item when it is a state variable, I need to like create a new item from it. So I'm going to like have some temporary that will be the old item. So because it is an object. So since this is an object, I'm taking the object and I am updating only what I need from it. That is the text part. So the text, it's going to be equal to event target value. So whatever I got from the value here, I'm going to assign to the text of this object. This is an object, not an array. Sorry. And then I update this new item with set new item. So every time now this will be, the user will be handling something, then I will be able to update this part of my object. For now, the idea, I'm not touching it. I'm just updating with the user input. The user input will be the text, will be in the target value, and I'm updating this part of the object, and I'm saving it to my new item variable. And then I want that when the button is clicked on where the form is submitted, so you could do either thing. You could either have some on click event here, and then a handle click, or one of the two, not both of them are needed, or an on submit event here, and again, handle click or handle submit, whatever you want to call it. So one or the other. So let's just do the button on click, handle click. And what do I want the handle click to do? I want to add the item to my list. So I want to take what I have stored in this new item by the user input and push it to my array. Only that in React, we cannot push. We have to do it this spread format. So I'm going to create this other function, handle click. So what I would like to do, I would really like, if I could do it with normal JavaScript, is that I would take the list and I would have to push this new item that I have saved. This is what I'm trying to do with a handle click, right? Update my array, adding the new item. So just that here I cannot do push, and what I have to do is like to create a new array that will be spreading the previous one so that I take all the items of the array. So this creates like a copy of the old array, and I add as a last item this new item to this array. So I'm creating a copy of my list array, I add this new item, and in this format I create a new array that I can then pass to my set list setter here and update my list variable. Okay, let's see if this works. I think I have it saved. So something new, add item, and I see it there. And of course, we see this refresh happening because this is a form, and whenever I'm having things inside the form, the default of the form is to refresh and clear its input field. So I need to do the prevent default. So I need to pass the event here as well and do prevent default before anything else. So another task. And this is added. One thing I didn't do here is to actually add the ID. So in fact, this new item doesn't have an ID yet. It has the default ID, but I need to add the new ID. And I think Joy showed you one way of doing it. So we could have new item ID being equal to date.now. This generates some kind of random ID based on the date. So we could have this for creating automatic IDs like this. So every time before I push the new object to the array, I also add an ID to it with a date.now. And so a new task, just another one, and it just adds. And I could also clean this if I want so that it doesn't show. So after I push the new item and everything, after I'm adding it to the array, then I need to clean this part of the new item, or I could just set new item to an empty object again. So to this same object. So that I have a clean object to start for my next iteration. Refresh, and now we'll see something else. And it cleans. And I also don't get any error messages regarding IDs. So that means that probably the ID is generated correctly, and I have unique IDs for all items, because if not, I would get that either an ID is duplicated or something. But I could also console log my list so that I can see the IDs and everything. Just that it takes some time. If I just console log it here, it still has not updated. So the update of the state, sometimes it takes some time. So if I console log the list, I will see still see the previous 3 items without the new one. If I add the new one, adding one more, then I will see the 4th, etc. So I will always like be with this console log here. I will be with one step backwards in delay, but at least I can see that I have the ID created with this date now, and well, it's different than the previous one, but it doesn't matter. It's a unique ID like this. So I'm going to delete this. So questions until here?
I have a question for the ID. I was like a little bit unsure whether I should put it in the UL or the LI for the list. So it's always on the list, what do you call it? The list element that we put it, since it always prints as a list and then it always wants a unique ID. Is that correct?
It's in the first element that you create inside your map.
Okay.
So the map returns one element. It could either be a custom element. So instead of a list item like this, you could have, let me just comment this, and you could have like list item, something that you have created, a component that would be accepting some props, and then the key should be here on the, again, like this item.id, because this is your list item now. So it's not that it has to be in the LI, in the list item. It can be a div, it can be an image, it can be a custom component that you create. So the item that the map returns should have a unique key.
Okay, thank you.
So the first one, so the root element, because also in here in the list item, you can have other things. You can have a paragraph, some span, some div, some image, many things. So on the first element, that the root element that the map returns, this is where the key should be, because the map is that the one that is creating the list. So I know IDs were a bit complicating things. We could use the array index so that we don't have to deal with this. If we wanted to use the array index, we just map, we pass item dot index, and then instead of ID, we use the index here. But I think most of you did it okay with the date.now, and there was no issue. Like this, we created some unique IDs. We will see today with the APIs that normally the data that come to us and that we handle, they always come with some ID, so we don't need to create unless we create our own data for something. Okay, and so the last thing we wanted to do is that when we clicked on one of them, it kind of showed that it was clicked and some strike through or something. So for this, in its li item, I need to have some event listener that when I click it, some kind of on click event listener. When I click it, it kind of calls a function that strikes through the item or just changes the class name, etc. So a quick way of doing it would be directly here on click. I just set the class name of this item, of the clicked item, so of the target of the event. So the event is happening on this. So I'm just setting a class for this item to strike, or as you want to call it. And then or done, I have it done here. So to have some decoration here done, for example, this line through that it's going to change the test. So instead of strike, it's done. So then when I click on this item for the target, I will add a class name called done. And so when I click it, it just adds it. But now if I click it again, it doesn't undo it. So I managed to like click them, but this doesn't also, it doesn't toggle the class. So it doesn't check if it is clicked, then to unclick it. So this would be like the easiest way to to do this part, a way to cross out items, because it doesn't really ask the exercise doesn't really ask so that you can uncross them also, so that you can cross and uncross all the time. But most of you, I think, you did it with a smarter way, so that here you were calling some function instead of directly adding a class name. So on click, let me see, how was it? Check item or something, some kind of function that check item. Okay, and so on this function, you pass the item ID. So we could pass on this function, we could call it like this and pass the item ID so that we know which item was clicked. And then we have to find this item from our items array. So here on our list. And one way of doing it, we'd have to add to our object something like is checked, some true or false parameter, so that when an item is checked, we mark it as true. And if we want to unmark it, we mark it back to false. And so depending on if the item is checked or not, then we add this done class. So let's say that we start with all our items with is checked equal to false. And then here our list item will have a class name that will be conditional, a conditional class name, so that it depends on if is checked is true. Then I'm going to add the done class name, and if not, I'm not adding anything. So for each item, we have a property that says is checked, that then we will try with this check item function to modify so that we put from true to false. And then depending on this property, I'm adding or not the class to this item. So if I start with all to false, then all my items are unchecked. But if I put some of them to true, then I should see the first one striked. Now there is a function missing. I have some errors here, so always like check your console. Is checked is not defined. Okay. Okay, because is checked doesn't exist on its own. Is item dot is checked. So this is a property of my object. It's not a variable that exists on its own. So you see that now, even before checking it, just because this is true, the first one shows like strike through. And so then I needed to have a function to just modify this from true to false. So one way will be to send the ID or even set the whole item here and modify the isChecked property of the item with this ID. So let me see. We need to find the item with this ID or from our array. So first we can use the find index found. So we get our list, and with the find index, for example, we try to find an item where the item ID is equal to the ID of the item that was clicked. And so like this, I know which item from my array is the one that I want to modify to go from is checked from false to not false to true. And so then, so sorry for the delay, I'm adding this like on the fly because the easiest way was just to strike it through and not go back to it. But since most of you did it also, I wanted to show, or some of you at least, they did it with going back and forth. And okay, so now I have the index of the item that I want to modify. And so I go to my list item. If you have any ideas, just shoot, right? So it should be that from my list item, I should modify this, but I cannot modify my list directly. So I need to use the set list to modify it.
For our not handle change for our new item, the state, do we need the is checked in the object as well?
Here.
On line 14.
No, because it takes the previous object and it just modifies the text. So in this case here, we will just leave it checked as it was by default, which was, we need it here.
Yep, on 14,
yes.
yeah.
Yes, okay, yes, here we do need it, just to put some default variable, and also here as well, when we reset it. Yes. And here we don't need to do anything with this because it will just modify the text part and it will leave the other properties of the object as it was with a handle change. Okay, let me do it in another way. I can use a filter as well, a map, sorry. So for each item, if item ID is the same, then item dot is checked to the opposite of what it was before. Okay, and then I just set my list to this new array. Let me see if this works. So I just take my whole array and I create a new array, but I just modify this one item that the ID is matching. I modify the isChecked property to the opposite of what it was before. Okay. And so now I can like click and unclick it and it shows on and off. You could do it with other ways. You could have like a done button on the side. You could have some check mark. And here also there are different ways of doing it, to take the array, to destructure it with a find index or with a find or with a filter to get the item that you want to modify. So I think you did it also with different ways here. But the idea is this, that we take one item, the item that was clicked, the item that was clicked is passed to us by the ID. So we get on click, we get the item of the ID that it was clicked and we pass it to a function. And then this function checks which item was clicked by checking this ID. So checks this ID and then it toggles the isChecked property on and off. So like this, we have the three basic items done, 1, 2, 3, a way to cross out items. And then the bonus was to sort items alphabetically. So for this, the easiest way here, we don't need to have like a sort button. We can automatically always have them alphabetically sort by adding a sort function before the map. So right here, if we just add, there is a sort method and a sort method for the arrays. And so even without passing anything, like normally it takes some callback function to describe how we want to sort items. But by default, this is done alphabetically order if we are discussing strings. And so it will sort them alphabetically. Let me try a new task. So if it was with strings, it would sort them alphabetically directly with nothing, but just here now we have objects, and so we need to pass inside our sort function a way to sort these items. If we check it, let me just check one more thing. Yes, okay. So the A should be on the top, it should automatically, so now it's not working. If you check sort array of object or sort function, sort array JavaScript. This is the sort function here. So we could use this sort method. So if it is just an array of simple strings, even without passing any argument, it would sort them alphabetically. But now we are sorting like an array of objects, so it's a bit more complex. We need to define how exactly we want to sort it. And so you can pass some arrow function inside. If you go later down, there are some examples. The most common way is to pass something like this if we want to sort numbers. So if we want to sort them by index, let's say, we could use this function and sort them like this. So in our case, I'm going to use a function. I have this already that already transforms to, here I'm missing a parenthesis, the items to lowercase so that it compares them, and then it returns 1 or -1. So if it returns 1, it goes on top. If it's -1, so it sorts them like this. It compares the two items by transforming them to lowercase, and then it returns 1 or -1 to sort. And so this, have some error here. To lowercase. So the two items, of course, now are objects, so I need to check their text to lowercase. So this and this make reference to items of my list, but these items are objects. And the part that I want to compare in order to order them is the text property. So this is my object. I don't want to order them by ID, which could be also an option, or I want to order them by checking the text. And so I need to check this property. I transform it to lowercase, and then I compare one to the other. And this callback function of the sort always has to return either 1 or -1, so that it knows how to sort the item. And so like this, a new task goes on top, get some sleep, should go on the bottom. So, okay, this was optional. And you could find exactly this this callback function. So how this is structured in here in the examples that you get. So there is one part that is for sorting items. So this was like the easiest part. But then you have also some examples of sorting array of objects and how you check the different values. So if you check the value that it's a number, you can use this function, a minus the other, or you can check, you have some other more complex sorting functions. So there are some examples here that could help you with the sorting. It depends on if you sort by number or by text. So this was one way of doing it with no components. Then you could start with this, and once you had this, you could, of course, like create new components, pass this form to a new component and create like a form component and do the connection, like passing some prop, or the on click of the form call it something from the parent. And you could also have this list item as another component if you want, but you don't have to get too complicated. If the time is strict, we start with the very like 1 to 3 basic things that we want to do, show the list, add an item, and strike through. And then we check this, how to refactor it and make it nicer or change to more components. So it was not really super easy, especially if you have to deal with objects. It's not super easy. If we had to do just items like strings, then it was really easier. And you could also start with a version with no IDs, with no is checked. So just the text, just an array of string of the tasks. And then it was really easier also to update the state and everything. You don't have to do this destructuring. But it's good that if we practice with objects, because normally we will be working with objects. So questions? Okay, let me see. Quickly try to to get the view part as well, just to show both. So I'm not going to do it from scratch, or we could try to do it from scratch. Let me just copy this and let's see.
Oh, Anna, sorry, I actually remembered I had a quick question. It's very simple. Something I'm a bit confused about is when sometimes you write function and then sometimes you use the syntax of declare constant. What is
the arrow function? You mean
okay.
The syntax is, it's an arrow function, it's just a different format. So maybe I used it here. Let me check in this React solution. So, okay, so here I had them all with function, but you could find somewhere that maybe this handle change, I have it with this handle change, and it takes the event, and then the rest would be the same. So it would be the code in here would be the same. So these two formats are equivalent, and it's just either the arrow function or this. And it's like the most modern way of writing it after the ES6. And yes, you can use one or the other, and you can mix them. So one have them with functions, one the other. Normally, people that are used to writing arrow functions write everything in arrow functions because it's easier. And so for me, arrow functions are good if I write something very simple, like maybe one line. Then if not, I try to structure it like in a more of the old-fashioned function way. But it's just personal preference. So
okay, thank you.
Yes, it doesn't make any difference. So I will do it the opposite way. I will. So I'll keep here the copy. And try to empty this to-do list. And on view, then we have this. So again, I will like write a very simple version of this with no different components, everything being on this same file. So again, we had 1, 2, 3. First, create and show an array of items. So we wanted to create some data to store the array of items in view. Data is a function that returns an object, and so all our data should be in here. And let's say, as before, that I call it list, and that this is an array that can hold the 3 items that I want. So I could copy it, or again, ID 1, text, go to the cinema, etc. And so like this, I'm starting my list. Do some cleaning. This is my initial list with the 3 items. And so first task was to show it in view. We use the v4 for showing some elements. So we will create list items that we will be creating with the v4 directive that will iterate through our items. So I'm going to take item in list. So from this list, which is an array of objects, I will get each one of the items and I will show it with item.text. Again, the red line is because I have not used any key. I need to set some key every time I create a list element in both Vue and React. So here I will use the ID as a key, and the ID is the item.id. And let me run so we will see it. npm run dev. So I have the 3 items here. Let me check if some error. Okay. And so my list like this is done, showing. Then the next step was to create a form. Again, I need some input element, type text. And I need to connect this element again with some piece of data that will be holding a new item that will then be pushed to the list. So here I add some new item that will hold this, that it's an object. At the beginning, it will be an empty object. I need some comma here. So this input field, I connected with this new item text. The text part will be my input field. So with the V model, I said that this is connected to this new item.text. And so I don't need to do any on change here. Directly, this creates the connection. And then maybe just add also a button. But I do need to now do the adding of the item to the list. So that the button on click, or if the form is submitted, let me just do it on the form in this case, just for a change. On submit. So this is not on submit in, sorry, between React and Vue. So here it's submit like this, right? Oh, no, add submit. it's add submit. So on submit, it's like this in review. So in view, so between React and Vue, if you go from one to the other, you will get a bit crazy because there's different. So when it will be submitting, we will handle the submit like this. And we could also add the prevent directly here, the prevent default. We could add it as a shortcut here so that it will not refresh the form. And so the handle submit we need to create, it's a method that we need to create to handle the submit. So to take this and add it to my list. And for this, I go here and I add the methods, handle submit methods that will take this dot list. So in my list, this dot list, I will push the new item that I have created, this dot new item. Okay, let me just try it. Take it from school. And so it is here. I need to reset it if I want to clean it afterwards. Then after pushing it to my array again, I need to set this new item dot text back to an empty string. So I reset it like this. And I can also create an ID before pushing it. So this new item dot ID dates now to create a unique ID to it before I push it. And then I can set the text to an empty string and the ID again to 0, just to reset it. After I finish adding it to the list. On number, this, okay, here is ID. Okay, no error. Let me see. Okay, this is because it is an object. So in the solution I have, it's with just a string. So if it's just a string, it's as simple as that. The thing now is that this object, this new item, so since you pass it by reference, if it is an object, then you are, if I modify the object here, I modify the object that I passed to the list. So this is, I pushed this object to the list, but it's still the same object I'm modifying because I'm passing it by reference. If I want to pass it as a new object, I need to create a new object here and pass it like this. So this will create a copy of the object that I will push to the list. And then this new item will be disassociated from this other one. Okay, so when we work with objects, it's a bit tricky because even if you like this, equals to 0, you pass it as we did it now, but it's the same object that I'm modifying later. So now I was resetting it and it was actually resetting the object that was inside the list. So if I do it like this now, it should work because this object is a different one and I can add different things. This creates a copy with this spread operator. And then the last thing from the 3 tasks was to be able to click on one of the items and to have it strike through. So I will just show the easy way for this. I will not create the toggle part like on off For this, I can pass you later a solution with on-off. So the easier way would be here. Let me just add some spaces. To have an on-click again. So an on-click event so that when I click on this item, some class is added. So for this in React, we could in Vue, sorry, we can make use the event target like this with a dollar symbol and then event target. So that means that the element that was clicked on its class list, I toggle, means that I will add or I will remove if it is already added. So I will add or remove the class. I have my done class here. No, this is called stripe here, not done. So that means that on click on the item that it was clicked, so on the event target, on the class list of this item, which in my case is the element, the list item, I'm going to either add or remove the strike class. The toggle is the on-off, right? So if it exists, I will remove it. If it doesn't exist, I will add it. And so on clicking one of the elements, it will either add or remove this class, and this class will show the strike.
Anna, I'm sorry. Could you say again what the $ syntax means? The event.
It's like referring to the event target.
Okay.
Automatically here. So this dollar is used when you use the event object, you use it with the dollar if you use it like inline here. And it's like this in the view. I think if you pass it to a function, you would use it with a normal without dollar. I'm not sure we have done it by passing it to a method. I need to check because now I may be confused with React. So at least inline here, you use it with the $ to refer to it. And it's just for referring to the event of this click event. Okay, and we are missing the bonus part, which is the sorted. So for sorting our items, we will use the same sorting function, but so what we could use, it could be also that we have this computed property. So instead of creating a new list of the sorted, so I don't add it directly there because now I don't have any map that I can chain with the sort method of the array directly. Instead, I need to do this sorting beforehand, before showing the list. So for this, I create a computed property that I call like sorted items. And remember, in Vue, computed properties seem like they're functions, but then we can use them as if they were actually a piece of data. So these sorted items, I'm going to get my items. So this should return the items list. So this list, sorry, no items. So this list sorted. And so in here, I can pass the same sorting method that I have used in React. It's a callback function that takes two items and then it compares these two items. So I can do a.text to lowercase and compare it with b.text, same as that I did to React, to lowercase, and then depends on if one is bigger than the other, I return 1 or I return -1. So this is my sorting function. And so now I have these sorted items that is my list, but it's sorted. And so, in fact, I want to replace what I'm showing up here and don't show the list, but show the sorted item always. So the sorted items will be automatically calculating. When the list is changing, the sorted items will be changing. These two things are connected. So even if I push a new item to my list, then the sorted items are recalculated and returned. And so I can use these sorted items on my list up here. And so always sorted. So now it's sorted if I add something, it sorts them the opposite way. And let me check. Okay, it's changing up and down. A, B. It does sort them, but okay. I don't know why it's sorting them. Take something, it should go in the middle. Maybe it's because it's. So it's not really working very well. Need to check. Sort. It's the same that we used in React, right? Yes. Okay, I'll check it. I don't want to waste more time with the sorting now, but the idea is the same, that we use the sort method of the array, but that's just that we have it in a computed property, and then we show this data up here in sorted items. Okay. So this was anyway, was the bonus part for sorting. So questions on the view then, at least on the basic stuff. Was it easier? So I have it here. It should be this same way, just that I have it.
Anna, I have one question.
Yes.
Yeah, it wasn't really covered here, but I was a bit confused on what's the difference between putting the default like pre-filled info in the uncreated or in the unmounted life cycle, you know?
Yes. Okay, yes, because this you could also like load on created or on mounted, which is the life cycle, yes, method. There are some articles I can pass you. Some say to use it on created, some say to use it on mounted. It also has to do, I think there's a difference between using the options API and the composition API in Vue. So you know that the Vue also had a major change and they can use also the composition API. So there is some, I think I have found in some articles that they say that you should use it on created and another on the mounted. The thing is that in one of the two things, I think, or either the composition or the API, now I'm not sure, the mounted method doesn't exist, so that you have to use it on the other one. But I will find the article better, it explains it better, and I will pass it to you so that you can check. So which one to use, either created or mounted.
Okay, thank you.
They are not very different, but there is a small difference. When it is created, mounted means that it's also showing on the DOM. Created means that the functions are created, but it doesn't yet show on the DOM, so it's not yet mounted, the component. So this small difference makes a bit of a difference depending on where to use it. So I'll better find the article and pass it to you for when. I think we were kind of like 50-50 on them. I don't know, Monica, which did you use, React or Vue?
I use React.
Okay, so now then we are 6-4 because I was missing yours. We were 5-4 on React and 4 on Vue, and so with yours we are 6-4 and React is winning. But so it was good that you tried different things. And I need to fix this sorting function. Okay. So I think Vue was slightly easier, but well, it has its own things. And anyway, did you find it hard as an assignment? It was mostly that you couldn't check the code. I think that it was a bit hard, so that you had to kind of remember everything or check it online only and not copy bits, which is not the common way, because normally we just we're based on our previous code and we copy stuff. So, but it was just for practicing. Anyone tried to like do it in one and then gave up and changed to the other, or you were from the beginning like determined that I'm going to try it on this or I'm going to try it to the other?
I still have no idea about React, so I wanted to do it with Vue, and that's why I chose it.
Okay.
Yeah, would it be possible to have someone's maybe who wants to share like the React with components or something?
Yes.
So the ones that we did, we can have the other.
So I can share a couple of solutions. I will share on Slack, so the complete solutions on React. I actually have it also with component. Oh, cancel. So here I have the same thing, but with components, just a list as a component. So just one of the things. Then maybe you can also have the form as a component. So I have different solutions, but I can pass you one with components as well, so that you can check it. Okay. Okay, so we will continue using like React today on the assignment. I think it's done with React. If you prefer to do it with Vue, it's not a problem, but I think the assignment, when you get it, the starting code is with React. So we will see more of React these days, but in parallel, we have to see some other things on backend. So today we'll let's take now 10 minutes break, and then we go full on Fetch, which is a very useful tool, and we'll open up really a lot of opportunities for creating interesting apps and have more fun with coding. Okay, and I will prepare something to share with the solutions. So the solution for the milestones, so that you have them and you can compare one and the other, so that you see also in both languages how the same thing is done. Okay.